Happy Friday, everybody. Today is July 24th, 2026, and this is your Friday planning video. The people who handle uncertainty best are usually not the people who can predict the future. They're the people who have enough flexibility to deal with whatever future arrives. I was thinking about that recently because uncertainty seems to be one of the few constants in life. Turn on the news and there's uncertainty. Look at the markets and there's uncertainty. Pay attention to politics, interest rates, inflation, taxes, world events, technology, healthcare, or the economy, and there's uncertainty. The truth is, uncertainty is always present. The only thing that changes is what we're uncertain about. Yet, if there's one thing I've learned after more than 30 years of helping clients navigate financial decisions, it's that most people spend far too much time and energy trying to predict the future and not enough energy preparing for multiple possible futures. And those are two very different things. A few months ago, I was meeting with a client who was concerned about the market. To be fair, there were plenty of reasons to be concerned. The headlines were filled with predictions. Some experts were convinced of a recession was coming. Others were convinced it wasn't. Some were predicting interest rates would move one way. Others were predicting the exact opposite. At one point in the conversation, he looked at me and he asked, "What do you think is going to happen?" It's a question I've been asked thousands of times over the years. And the honest answer is always the same. I don't know. Nobody knows. Now, some people find that answer frustrating, but I've actually come to view it as freeing. Because once you accept that the future cannot be predicted with certainty, your focus naturally shifts. Instead of trying to be right about every future event, you begin to ask a much better question. How do I make sure that I'm prepared regardless of what happens? That's where good planning lives. Years ago, I had a client who owned a successful business. He was a very smart guy, and one of the things I admired most about him was the way he thought about risk. One day, he told me something I've never forgotten. He said, "Randy, I don't spend much time trying to predict problems. I spend my time making sure that I can survive them." At the time, we were talking about business, but the lesson applies equally well to financial planning because life rarely unfolds exactly the way we expect it to. Think about the last 5 to 10 years. How many of us actually predicted a global pandemic? How many of us predicted the inflation surge that followed? How many of us predicted interest rates rising at the pace that they did? How about how many of us predicted every market move, every election result, every geopolitical event, every technological breakthrough? Very few people. And yet life continued. Businesses adapted, families adapted, investors adapted, plans adapted. The people who navigated those years most successfully weren't necessarily the ones who made the best predictions. They were the ones who had the most flexibility. They had emergency reserves, manageable debt, they had diversified investments, they had thoughtful plans. Most importantly, they had room to adjust. That's something I don't think gets discussed enough. When people think about financial strength, they often think about size, bigger account balances, bigger incomes, bigger portfolios. But in many cases, financial strength isn't about size. It's about flexibility. It's about having enough margin in your life that unexpected events don't immediately become crisis. One of the reasons we've spent this month talking about independence, optionality, and time is because all three of those ideas lead naturally to this one, flexibility. The more flexibility you have, the less uncertainty controls you. A person who has options at work is less vulnerable to changes in employment. A family with emergency savings is less vulnerable to unexpected expenses. A retiree with multiple income sources is less vulnerable to disruptions in any one of those areas. Flexibility doesn't eliminate uncertainty. It simply reduces uncertainty's power. I remember another conversation from years ago with a client who was approaching retirement. We were reviewing various scenarios and stress testing the plan. We looked at strong markets, weak markets, higher inflation, lower inflation, different spending assumptions. After about an hour, he laughed. He said, "Okay, so basically you're showing me that a lot of different things could happen." I said, "Exactly." Then he said, "So which of those do you think is going to happen?" And I remember smiling because we were right back where we started. The goal wasn't to predict the future. The goal was to build a plan that could succeed under a variety of futures. That's an entirely different mindset. And frankly, I think it's a healthier one because uncertainty isn't going to go away. There will always be another headline, another prediction, another concern, another reason to worry. But there will always be opportunities, new possibilities, unexpected blessings, positive surprises. The future contains both. That's why I believe the strongest plans are not built around certainty. They're built around adaptability. As we head towards the end of July, I think it's an important reminder. You don't need to know exactly what's going to happen next year, 5 years from now, or even 10 years from now. What matters is whether you're building enough flexibility into your life to respond thoughtfully when life unfolds differently than expected. because after all these years, I've become convinced that freedom during uncertain time doesn't come from having all the answers. It comes from knowing that you'll be okay even when you don't know the answers. As you head into the weekend, think about one area of your financial life where a little more flexibility could create a lot more confidence. Sometimes the most powerful planning decisions aren't the ones that increase returns, they're the ones that increase resilience. And resilience has a way of creating freedom. If you'd like to talk about ways to build more flexibility and resilience into your financial plan, I'd always be happy to have that conversation. Have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you next week.